All right. Let's cut the music for a second. Warning, this episode contains mentions of ableism and sexual assault. Listener discretion is advised. And on that lovely note, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy belated Hanukkah, Happy holidays, and happy end of 2021, which has been awful but still slightly better than 2020. Because at least we got our COVID vaccines this year. At least I hope you did, or that you're in the process of getting them. Please. Okay. Seriously, God, my parents asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and really, I just want this nightmare of a pandemic to end. Anyway, welcome to Beauties and Beasts, a podcast of all things beauty and the beast. I am your host, DF, and join me today for our lovely Christmas special. And speaking of nightmares, we're going to cover another one of Tim Burton's films. The one that launched Johnny Depp's reputation as Burton's go-to male star, Edward Scissorhands from 1990, which is technically a Christmas movie and one of the saddest that I have ever seen. Before I get into this, I'd like to thank my $5 plus patrons, Arvin Joshua Rocks 15, BellaPinkSavage, Cosmic Trail, Poppy X Branch 2000, and Tyrannosaurus Venom. You too can become a patron today. Just go to patron.podbean.com/beautiesandbeasts and pledge at least $1 a month and get rewards in return. Also, you can buy my merchandise at disneyfanatic23.redbubble.com. Got holiday merch, got pride merch, got merch for this podcast. And remember that 10% of my November and December proceeds will be donated to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So far, we've raised about $18, but still have time left in the month, so pledge as a patron or buy merchandise today if you want to make a contribution to granting the wishes of children suffering from terminal illnesses. Okay, so Edward Scissorhands opens on a snowy night when a little girl asks her grandma where the snow comes from. The grandma then tells the story of a man who had scissors for hands. In the old mansion on top of the hill lived Vincent Price, an eccentric inventor, who created a man all Frankenstein style. But before he could give the man hands, the old inventor died. So his creation was left alone and incomplete, without one key element that would make him fully human. Oh God, this movie is relatable already. I'll get into my personal connection after the plot summary. So, while the mansion on the hill is withered and gray, the suburban neighborhood below is all vibrant and clean with pastels everywhere. Hey, kind of like the aesthetic contrast in Corpse Bride, but in reverse. You'll see what I mean. Anyway, the makeup saleswoman, Peg Boggs, is going door to door, but is not making any sales. Her problem is she keeps calling on the same people, and so in desperation, she goes up to the old mansion on top of the hill. There, she is surprised by a beautiful garden that is decorated with intricately trimmed hedges in all kinds of shapes. But inside the house, everything is falling apart and in cobwebs. In this world, there is beauty, but also despair. Okay, seriously, I love the artistic direction in this movie. In the attic, Peg finds a tattered bed next to a wall of newspaper clippings, all associated with hands, and in another corner, a young man sporting several blades on his limbs. At first, Peg is frightened, thinking he's going to attack her with all those knives, until she takes a closer look and realizes they're his hands, and that his face has several cuts. She heals them with her makeup disinfectant. She asks his name, Edward. She asks about his mother. His father? He didn't wake up. And that's all she needs to hear. Overwhelmed with motherly instinct, Peg takes Edward to her home, which is so clean and organized, and he thinks it's so cool. Right away, she notices that not only is Edward's appearance different, but his behavior. But she is very patient and goes along with him as he wanders around. She shows him the family pictures of her husband, son, and teenage daughter Kim, aka Winona Ryder. Edward is especially taken with Kim's photo, maybe because she's super blonde, I don't know. He doesn't meet her yet because she's on a hiking trip with her friends. Yes, Bella, I agree. Edward is too pure for this sinful world. And I will go more into that later. Peg sets Edward up in Kim's room and helps him put on clothes. No hands, slices right through them, and says that she has a doctor friend that may be able to help him. Yeah, lady. People say that to people like me all the time. Shut up. Sorry. Sorry. But in the meantime, Peg offers to cover up the scars on Edward's face. Your heart is in the right place, lady, but no. Meanwhile, all the busybody biddies gossip about Peg's new guest and all try to get a look at him and fill up her answering machine. Remember those. Peg's husband Bill and son Kevin come home for dinner, and naturally, Edward's having trouble with his food. Seriously, why does nobody help him with the silverware in this movie? The dad and the son are surprisingly chill about the guy with scissor hands. The son even wants to take him to show and tell. And they all soon find out that Edward has a talent for trimming hedges. But one overly religious, God-fearing neighbor named Esmeralda is not happy about him, calling him a demon, saying they're all lost sheep. And Edward's like, we're not sheep. But she is scared away by his scissor hands. The rest of the neighborhood biddies insist that Peg hold a barbecue so they can all meet him. And they are all strangely welcoming, especially a very horny middle-aged lady named Joyce, who is apparently turned on by Edward's scissor hands. Not to kink shame, but she's also married, as if her lusting after a young man of questionable age wasn't bad enough. Mentally, he's a child and he wasn't technically born. And how old is he anyway? Like a couple years that the inventor was working on him. I mean, and aside from that, you're married. There is one nice guy at the barbecue, an army vet, who tells Edward, "Don't let people tell you have a handicap." Anyway, the ladies all ask Edward to trim their hedges for them, and eventually cut their dog's hair, and then their own hair. And they pay him in cookies. Sure, taking advantage of the guy who spent his entire life in isolation and thus doesn't get the concept of money. Oh yeah, and Winona Ryder, I mean Kim, comes home from her hiking trip in the middle of the night, and because nobody told her about their little visitor, she's freaked out upon seeing a guy with these massive knives in her bed. And Edward is equally freaked out and ends up destroying her waterbed. Seriously, who thought it was a good idea to put a guy sporting a bunch of sharp knives in a waterbed? And then the mom calmly explains everything, but Kim is still wary of Edward, as is her boyfriend, Jim. So in all his snippy work, Edward has become a local celebrity, coming to Kevin's show and tell and getting on a cable talk show. While on TV, an audience member says that she knows a doctor that might be able to help him get prosthetic hands. And Edward says that he'd like to meet him. And then another audience member says, well, if you got prosthetic hands, then you'd be just like everybody else and not be special anymore. Although Peg says Edward will always be special no matter what. We all need a mother figure like Peg in our lives. From the TV show, they also get the idea to open a beauty salon. And horny Joyce goes ahead and buys a perfect building and gets them all set up. Edward's excited. He can now cut hair, there's space for Peg to sell her cosmetics, and Joyce shows him a back room where she pushes him in a chair, turns on romantic music, dances sexily, and aprons, uses Edward's blades to snip open her blouse while Edward sits there utterly bewildered, and oh my god, this scene is messed up. Boy's practically a child, and this cougar is offering him a salon on condition that he fulfill her sick, perverted fantasies, and he has no idea what she's doing! Yeah, men aren't the only ones capable of sexual assault, just so you know. Luckily, Joyce doesn't get far, as the chair topples over, thank God, and Edward makes a beeline for the exit, apparently still having no clue of what's just happened. So much so, he has no problem sharing it with his family at lunch. And everyone is dead silent. Except for the dad, who goes on about how the next step is to get a loan from the bank. Yeah, we gotta gloss over the fact that this poor man-child was almost raped. Did you miss that, Dad? Yes. I see people getting really upset in the chat. I didn't like this scene either. Oh my god, it was awful. Moving on, apparently, Edward is unable to get a loan from the bank because he has no records, no birth certificate, no social security number, and basically doesn't exist. Peg says not to worry, they'll get the money some other way. Hey, maybe ask those ladies to pay up for all those free head trims and haircuts. There's an idea. They kind of owe you. Meanwhile, Kim's boyfriend Jim is broke and his dad won't give him the money he needs to buy a van for him and Kim to live in. Yeah, that's the dream there. After witnessing Edward pick the house lock for them while Kim lost her keys, Jim schemes that they should use Edward to break into his dad's safe room. Kim thinks that's wrong, but Jim says Edward will do it if she asks him. He will do anything for her. Yeah, see, girl, this is why you don't date a guy whose name rhymes with yours. Tim Burton. Oh, I get it. So, Kim, Jim, and their friends take Edward with them in the dead of night to Jim's house, under pretense that the owner of the house stole from Jim and he needs help getting his own stuff back. So it's not stealing if it's actually his to begin with. Edward unlocks the front door, but once they get into the safe room, the security system shuts Edward in, and the alarm goes off. Jim and the others hightail it out of there, dragging a screaming Kim with them, who insists that they go back for Edward. The police arrive, disable the alarm, and order Edward to come out of the house with his hands up. But naturally, they mistake his hands for weapons, and when he won't drop them, the cop takes out his gun. Yeah, now, see, police brutality isn't just a 2021 thing, okay? But the neighbors tell the cop that those are his hands and that they know him. Edward is taken to jail. Peg and Bill come get him. Peg feeling like this is her fault for not explaining the law to him and thinks it's because she talked of getting money for the salon. She asks Edward if someone put him up to it, but he says nothing. The cops get a psychiatrist for Edward, who confirms that he's not a danger, rather that years of isolation have made him unable to recognize right from wrong, and that his highly imaginative mind makes it difficult for him to understand reality. The cop lets Ed go, sympathetically telling him to be careful out there. When Kim comes home to find Edward, she asks why he didn't say anything about their involvement. Then he admits to knowing that it was Jim's house. And Kim's like, well, why did you do it then? 'Cause you asked me to. Yeah, girl, you took advantage of him, just like everybody else. But unlike them, Kim realizes her mistake and breaks up with Jim. Yeah, you go, girl. Meanwhile, Edward is so upset he tears up the wallpaper and curtains in the bathroom, all while staring in the mirror. Excuse me. The parents don't punish him for the damage to the bathroom, but Bill does try to teach Edward some ethics with an imaginary scenario. Say you find an abandoned suitcase full of money. What do you do? A. Keep it. B. Use it to buy gifts for your friends and family. C. Give it to the poor. Or D. Turn it into the police. Edward says he would give it to his friends, which says a lot about his personality. Not the answer that they are looking for, though Kim thinks it's still selfless and sweet. Yeah, that's the problem, kid. Yeah, you love your friends, but there's a limit to friendship. Now that Edward has a police record, none of the neighbors will go near him, fearing he'll rob them too. Oh yeah, and Joyce is going around saying Edward raped her to cover up her own crime. Ugh, you cougar. It's people like you that make it so hard for actual victims, like Edward, to come forward about what happened to them. So, fast forward to the Boggs' annual Christmas party. See, told you we'd get to Christmas eventually. The house is decorated, but none of the neighbors are coming. Kim goes outside to get Edward and finds him carving an angel ice sculpture so quickly with his scissor hands that sends snowflakes all around the yard. Kim, finding it beautiful, dances as the flakes cascade around her. Then Jim shows up, and Edward is so startled that he accidentally cuts Kim's hand. Jim goes off on Edward, calling him every freakish name in the book, saying he can't touch anything without destroying it. Kim defends Edward, and Jim's like, "The guy isn't even human. How can I lose you to him?" An angry Edward goes on a rampage, slicing hedges that he made himself, slashing tires, making a devil hedge to scare the God-fearing neighbor Esmeralda. Bill goes out looking for Edward while Peg tends to Kim's hand. Peg says she never should have brought him down here and didn't think of what could happen to him or them. At least up on the hill he was safe. Sad but true. Meanwhile, the police are called and Edward runs home. He meets with Kim. She asks him to hold her, though he insists that he can't. But she finds a middle ground and wraps his arms around her with his scissor hands dangling. Jim, in the meantime, makes his friend drive drunk to Kim's house while Kevin is walking home from a friend, and the same veteran who told Edward not to let people see him as handicapped asks if the police caught that cripple. Jim's van is out of control and is about to hit Kevin, but Edward pushes him out of the way, scratching the boy's face in the process. The neighbors gang up on him for attacking Kevin. Jim tries to beat Edward up and, in self-defense, scratches Jim's arm. The police are on their way, and Kim tells Edward to run, and he does, back to the mansion on the hill. As the mob of Karens come, the cop, the same cop who arrested Edward before, shoots his gun in the air and lets Edward run and tells the mob that it's all over. But because they're unsatisfied Karens, they go up to the mansion to see for themselves. Luckily, Kim gets her first and finds Edward in the attic. Edward asks if he hurt Kevin, but the boy is fine and was mostly just scared. Jim shows up with a gun, all Gaston style. There's a big struggle which ends in Edward stabbing Jim and pushing him out the window. Yeah, I ain't gonna miss that guy, and I don't think Kim is either. Edward and Kim, realizing the mob won't stop chasing him, share their goodbyes and their first and final kiss. Kim says that she loves him, runs downstairs, grabs a spare scissor hand from the lab, and goes out to where the mob's crowded around Jim's body. Kim, showing the blades, tells everyone that Edward is dead, that as he and Jim were fighting, the roof caved in, and they killed each other. And so, the mob departs, never to come up to the mansion again. Neither does Kim. Back to the present. You remember, there's a grandma telling a little girl the story. The girl in bed tells her grandma, "You can still go up and see him." And Grandma Kim, it was her all along, you see, says she doesn't want Edward to see her as an old woman, and rather he remember her as she was. The granddaughter asks how she knows that Edward is still up there. Because before he came down, it never snowed in this neighborhood, but after he went back, he did. So Edward is still on that mountaintop, carving ice sculptures, and Kim still dances in the snow. Damn it, Tim Burton! I think the only other one of your movies to pull at my feels this much was Corpse Bride. If you've watched Burton's films, you'll notice he uses a common trope of having a misfit as the protagonist. In this case, a character with a very unique physical disability and an imaginative outlook on the world, with a talent people praise and subsequently take advantage of. A gentle soul in a twisted body. Even visually, he doesn't belong in the utopian suburbia, totally different from Burton's usual aesthetic, which is the point. And when you know Tim Burton's history, you'll see that Edward Scissorhands mirrors his own relationship with society. Thanks to Burton's former wife, Helena Bonham Carter, he came to believe he was on the autism he was on the autism spectrum. Though it was never formally diagnosed, he did identify with the disorder, though it was confirmed that he did have a childhood dyslexia. So Burton's way of thinking is different from most, just like Edward's. And as exhibited by Tim Burton's movies, his imagination is unique and, while a tad disturbing sometimes, can also be perceived as beautiful. Just like Edward, who is essentially terrifying in appearance, he is very creative and finds beauty in everything. And in his own way, Burton himself may have felt incomplete at one time, when he couldn't learn at the same rate as other classmates. Even if Edward didn't have Scissorhands, his mentality makes him an outcast. However, what makes this pseudo-Frankenstein creation unique is that he actually is accepted by society at first, but seen more like a tool or carnival sideshow than a person. They took advantage of his innocence and talent, and when he didn't do what they wanted, Joyce, suddenly he was the one at fault. He couldn't even get angry without causing trouble. Oh, and BellaPinkSavage says, same, processing and retaining disability over here. Okay. I'm sure there are people like Tim Burton and Bella of all sorts that identify with this movie in some way. In my case, well, I don't have any confirmed disabilities. I identify with it as an asexual who has been treated like an outcast just because I don't crave sex like most people. At times I felt incomplete for not having the right feelings, even been referred to as inhuman. And people will suggest I go to a doctor and get myself fixed. But like they say in the movie, if I were fixed, then I'd be just like everybody else and wouldn't be special, or rather, I wouldn't be me. Without Edward's scissors, he wouldn't be able to do the things he'd do. So while in some ways I suppose it would be easier to be like everybody else, but at the same time, all of our individual quirks, our abilities and disabilities, our differing sexualities, they're all a part of who we are. And if any of that were to change, we'd be something other than ourselves. Okay, and Cosmic Trail in the chat here says they also have spectrum in the autism. Yeah, I don't know if this was made when Tim Burton realized he had autism, but it's definitely told from somebody who has been perceived as different from everybody else. The sad thing about this movie is that in the end, Edward had to go back into isolation because society just wouldn't let him belong. But while alone, he can still do things that make him happy. He just never has to leave his home again or try to make friends again. Geez, Burton, that's a real depressing message. I don't think he was in an emotionally good place when he did this movie. Now, as for the romance, the whole Beauty and the Beast part, gotta be honest, feels kind of secondary. I mean, all Edward and Kim really ever do is stare at each other. And the only reason Edward does anything for her is because she's pretty. I have a headcanon that Edward is asexual, but with aesthetic attraction. Although Kim does grow into a better person because of him and realizes what a jerk her boyfriend is, Kim is a teen who follows the crowd in the beginning, in contrast to Edward standing out, until she learns that the crowd isn't always right. In the simplest terms, society is a bitch, and I'm not even going to bleep that out. The better relationship in this movie than the romantic one is the mother-son relationship between Edward and Peg, who I think is the one who sees him most as a person rather than a creature, and makes the most effort to understand and support him. Only criticism I give Peg is trying to put all that awful makeup on him, just making it worse. The real villains in this movie are the neighbors, especially horny Joyce, who are more than ready to see the vices in Edward than they are in themselves. because they are perfectly normal and follow the rules of society and sane, they could never screw up. Yeah, right. Ableism is the worst. All right, so does anyone in the chat want to add anything to this conversation? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of this poor being, this poor guy who's just so pure. A guy who would never hurt anybody on purpose. Just has the misfortune of having dangerous hands that do come in handy. Okay, yeah. Bella says, thanks for the weekly tears, DF. Yeah. I can't stop my nose from running. Yeah, it's a sad movie. Yeah, and Cosmic Trail. Well, we already have some sexuality in here, so yeah. What's wrong with saying the word bitch? Society's awful. So, before the next episode, I'm going to be taking a holiday sabbatical. And we'll return with this podcast in late January with, as voted on by the patrons, Disney's Brother Bear. And if nobody has anything else to say, happy holidays. And remember, our absurdities and imperfections make us who we are. And society stinks and Karens stink the most. Ho, 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 everybody! Feliz Navidad! Melakinikimaka! Joyeux Noël!